So back to Bruce and his border story last week. I hear that he tells a story. We graduated from Emmanuel College, and Paul Logan, Reverend Paul, and Bruce and I, we decided it's time to treat ourselves and go to Daytona Beach, and we're going to do that in 21 hours. Still remember my mom loaning us the car. We didn't have anything. We were just poor students getting ready to go. All of us were being sent to Alberta. So this was a get ready to be ordained, sent off in July to Alberta. And so as Bruce told you last week, that we get to the border, and I'm a foodie, so I'm always eating something, and I was eating fruit, I guess, and I didn't think I was getting across the border. The guard was so tough, and I didn't know fruit wasn't allowed, especially, oranges from Florida. I couldn't bring them back across the border. But the part of the story Bruce probably didn't tell you is we did arrive safely in Daytona Beach, and Bruce, being a little more frugal than me, and Paul as well, found a motel for $30 a night. And I know we're talking 30 years ago, but the sirens were going outside. This was a part of Daytona that I had never seen before, but it was $30 a night for 3 guys. And my biggest mistake, as a few doctors have told me throughout my journey of life, sunscreen's a good idea. And back when I was 23, had no idea about sunscreen. So I got a pretty bad burn. And so I'm just going to solve the problem and go off and get some nice American, brand new. It was like aloe vera Solocane. You spray it on, takes all the pain away. What it didn't reveal to me, though, is I obviously have some kind of allergies. So we're sleeping in a motel room that I'm sure had lots of cockroaches. It was nothing fancy. 3 a.m, I wake up. I have hives. We're all in separate rooms. I go over, I just said to the boys, I said, I got to go get help. And they're like snoring away, yeah, go get. I'm like, yeah. So I drive off to Daytona Beach ER. Pretty nice hospital even back then. Nobody was there. It's not like Guelph General. Anyway, I walk in, and I'm just itching all over, going crazy, and thinking, I can't believe this is happening to me. Why? And my friends my Christian friends haven't even driven me here. I'm really throwing Bruce there now. And there is grace. Let me tell you, there is grace. There is a young man. He had a white coat on, so I really do trust he was a doctor. He came walking down the hall. Came up to me, and he said, "You're from Canada, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." He said, and he looked both ways when he said this. He said, "If you go through those doors, it's going to cost you more than you will ever imagine." He said, "You have hives. Go back to your hotel. Go back. I'm sorry, but you just got to lay in water, and you got to let the water kind of cool you down." He said, "Believe me, you don't want to go through those doors. You will be a poorer man if you go through those doors." I got back in my car. I felt a lot better. At least I was not going to be poor. By the next morning, I told them my great adventure. I said, I didn't get pulled over by the police. Nobody mugged me. But I discovered that there are people in this world that don't always care about money first. He actually cared about me, whether I was a crazy Canadian or not. Isn't it interesting how King Herod has all the power in the world? Some would argue that he's a puppet for the Roman Empire, that he doesn't have as much power as maybe others thought. But he's scared. And the first lesson about today's story is that powerful people, the most powerful, who seem to not care about anything, still have fears. And he's so afraid of this child that he's gathered his closest theologians and thinkers together to ponder what is happening with this bright star. And then there's these 3 wise ones from the east, and as scholars reveal, these wise ones, referred to as magi, sorcerer, they are astrologers. But what Matthew understands very clearly, and his listeners do, his Jewish listeners, is that anybody from the east, to be quite honest, is not to be trusted. The Babylonians and the Assyrians, they have conquered Israel in the past. Easterners are not to be trusted. But these ones are so wise that they seem to even know that as royal as they might be from where they come from, that they are searching and seeking for something greater than them, a wisdom that they cannot give themselves. Here's the interesting part of the story, and I don't think I really figured it out as much as traveling to Israel and realizing how close Jerusalem, where King Herod is, the epicenter of even the world today for religion, and Bethlehem. Back then, thousands of years ago, it's still only about 9 miles. I don't know if that's between Guelph and Rockwood, but it's just 9 miles away. And most intriguing is that this star, as profound as it is guiding these wise ones. This star doesn't quite guide them to Bethlehem. It guides them actually to King Herod, to Jerusalem. Now, some scholars believe the Isaiah reading that we heard Noreen read speaks about this light arising in Jerusalem. Perhaps they had read that text and they were guided to Jerusalem. Regardless, they were guided to King Herod. They missed Bethlehem by 9 miles, as Walter Brueggemann wisely says, just 9 miles. And so in their meeting with Herod, he slyly says, "Come away with me. We're going to have a little private session here." And then he very slyly, not revealing his true fear and anxiety, says, "Go and search diligently for that child, and when you find him, I too shall come in and worship him." He has set the plan. He can't be happier. These wise ones have arrived at his palace. These wise ones have discovered, well, they might have gone looking for this new king in a palace, but even Herod has told them, guess what? They say he's in Bethlehem. Go find him for me. So they trust this star and now this crazy king, and they go off to Bethlehem. And as the scripture reveals, when they arrive and they find the child, they are filled with joy and awe. Think about that for a moment. When have you been filled with awe and joy? The time your child was born? The time you realized you were in love? I have a dear friend who's in hospital right now. She's the great age of 88, and she was never able to have children, but over the Christmas holidays, visiting her in Toronto at St. Joe's Hospital, she said, to me, as a woman who's never had children, she said that one of the greatest joys I've had in my lifetime was, remember those days when your kids were like 2 and 5 and you were working late service at the church, and Nancy, your wife and I, your wife and I, she said, we had put the toys together for Christmas. And she said, I could hardly wait to see the joy in the eyes of your child, your kids. That's the joy that came to her. These wise ones were filled with joy. And then what's so beautiful about this story, I love it so much, they have a dream. And dreams are so incredible. Even though they're weird and we don't always understand them, sometimes we need help. But it's pretty clear that the dream that they have is so clear. They must not go back to King Herod. They must find another way home. It's almost like a foreshadowing. They know that this child will have to flee to Egypt with mom and dad. And one of the most horrific parts of this whole story behind it all is that King Herod is such a savage that he would have all Jewish boys 2 and under murdered in search of a child that he feared at some level and knew would change the world. It's a powerful story, and Matthew wants to get something pretty clear to his listener, and I think to us today. We might fear the people from other places. We might even have bad feelings about what they did in the past. The truth of this story is it's about grace for the whole world. It's about grace for everyone. It's about including everyone in God's love. One of my favorite writers, Brian McLaren, and I met him in Washington, D.C. last year. Brian is evangelical Christian that is profound. I remember the first time I heard him speak, he got up to the microphone, and Brian McLaren, who's written many books, one of my favorites is A New Kind of Christianity, he got up and greeting us pastors, us ministers, he said, I want to begin by saying, first of all, I love Jesus. Everybody, he said, I know you don't hear that too often, particularly in the Protestant or maybe the liberal church. He said, I love Jesus. But then I quote the new kind of Christianity that he speaks about. He says, and I quote Brian, for centuries, Christianity has been presented as a system of beliefs that supported a wide range of unintended consequences. And then he lists them. Colonialism, environmental destruction, the subordination of women, the persecution of the LGBT community and transgender, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, white privilege. What would it mean for Christians to rediscover, Brian says, that their faith not become a problematic system of beliefs, but just be a generous way of life, kind of rooted in contemplation and expressed in compassion, that makes amends for all the mistakes and is dedicated to a beloved community for all. Kind of goes back to that. I think he was a doctor in Daytona. He really cared, didn't he? Epiphany is a time when the light shines extra bright, even in the most difficult and dark places. And so my gift to you I want to close with is something I made copies of because I'm very fascinated with what the world says about Epiphany, and I mean people outside the church. And a woman by the name of Shannon Kaiser, I don't know a great deal about her, but I like what she has to say. She's a coach, a teacher, international speaker, and she has 8 epiphanies that I think I'd like to do a little more research on. I sent this to my daughters, and they said, Dad, this is the kind of message we need to hear more from the church. So I'm going to close with this, because this is a story that is about a Magi story about grace for all, but at the end of the day, it always does come back to what does this story mean for me and my journey? And so here are the 8 epiphanies as a gift for you this Epiphany. Number 1, you aren't what people say you are. So believe that, my friends. Be who you really are, not what other people think you are. Number 2, this is my life. Plan B is often better than plan A. I get lost all the time, and I think plan B is better than plan A. In other words, free yourself to trust as the Magi did. Number 3, you are more than a number on a scale. It's not about the number. It's about how you feel. It's about how you feel more than how you look. Number 4, the journey is more important than the goal. So take some road trips. Take some journeys, my friends. Number 5, this is something I need to learn as an extrovert. Being alone doesn't mean you will be lonely. Don't be afraid to be alone. Be comfortable with yourself. Number 6, this is for the to-do people and the people still cleaning after Christmas. It will never all be done. The to-do list and the chore list will be eternal, probably in heaven. And number 7, this is a tough one, but a true one. Emotional pain, it shows up when we need to make a change. maybe sadness, depression. I have a colleague, he said it at our last presbytery meeting so beautifully, and I don't think Paul would mind me saying this, but Paul said, as a colleague, a few more years experience than me, and Paul said, I quit my first job I ever quit. It happened to be a church, but he needed to quit it. And he said, I didn't know what in the world was next. But the minute I quit, I became a new person. Sometimes pain shows up telling us we need to change. Number 8, this is a very interesting one. You don't have to find your purpose. It will find you. And something tells me that the star in the sky and that those beautiful risk-taking magi, that they found their purpose by the purpose finding them. God bless you all.